Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This video will show how to build single-page Fury application without generating a new OData service or associated artifacts. The goal is to provide a framework that generates OData services on the fly based on demand, reducing the amount of work necessary for building OData services and related artifacts. So let's get started. Here I have my ABAP on cloud system A4H instance, and if you want to install your own instance, you can go check my other video. I posted it a few years ago, but still it is applicable. You could refer that video and you can install your own SAP ABAP developer edition to practice and to create these kind of things. So to start with, now I have already written part of the framework, and throughout these I will create sort of a series where I will uh, show you step by step how we can generate metadata, how can we generate the data provider class or metadata provider class, and how can we put together those all things. But to show you in short, let me show you a metadata. So first, let me log in on the system. Just to show you, I did not create any OData project. Let me log in. So if I go to HCGW in Gateway Builder, you would see this demo, but this is just the demo project and there is nothing. I can show you in SICF as well. There aren't any services. We can actually see from here. So let's go to maintain. Okay. This is the same system, so it doesn't really matter. I think there is a pre-filter. Is it a pre-filter? Hold on. So instead, close. Clean up app. Here. So this is OData maintain services. Essentially, you will see all the services here. If there are any, if I have created any service, we would see it here. Now, if you notice, we do have this demo project service, which I showed you earlier in SCGW. But beyond that, these are standard delivered services with ABAP Developer Edition, and there is nothing special here. Okay. Now I will go back to the browser. Here, I want to see metadata for ABAP on cloud. And this is the same system, by the way. Port 50,000 Y custom wrap slash USR02. That's the table we want to see metadata for, and metadata. Like how would we do it for any OData service? And there's a spelling. There's a typo, TR02. Okay, same. So it does recognize even though. Okay, so you see now I basically ask for a metadata for a given table. Which table? USR02. And this is my formatting to call a specific table. And this is not only limited to USR02 or any specific table. So if we go back to SC11 as an example, let's pick any other table. Let's see there. Let's say tables and show me the table. List of tables, and I can pick literally any table. Let me see what we can do. I don't know. The demo system doesn't have a lot of tables. I think there is a S flight though, or booking along those lines, like the flight model. No, it's not there. Let's see. If we go back here and if I say S flight, yeah, it should be there. Oh, that was the list was limited for 200. That's why there is a 200 hits limit. FLIGHT display. Yes, it does exist. So if I want to see metadata for S flight, I would go here and I will say S flight. And bam, we have a metadata for S flight now. You can see here, it actually generates metadata on the fly for a given table, respecting keys, its properties and all. Now, this is not a final product, so you might notice few things like, for example, these properties create, update, sortable, and those are all set to false. But when we will build the actual framework, we will have a way to enable each property, or a way to configure individual property, whether it's creatable, updatable, deletable, sortable, or whatever property we have in a metadata. Similarly, how we generate them in a CGW project. Now I have this metadata, this service which supplies metadata. If you understand how SAP Fiori works, or how SAP the SAP Fiori elements work, those Fiori elements generate applications based on metadata information. So if we have a metadata, we're pretty much ready to generate a Fiori element application. That's all the Fiori element application needs. It needs the metadata and it creates a table or creates the application. So let's launch VS Code. Again, now I'm using VS Code because I find it easy to do it. One kind of setup. My dev system doesn't need to talk to the BTP on a cloud, and I could play around, here. But I do have an option to connect to BTP and use Business Application Studio to do the same thing. And I will show you sometime later. And it is possible. I already did it. But just for simplicity, I will keep it here. Okay. Now, if you haven't seen my previous video on how to use VS Code for Fiori development, I would recommend go back and check that one. So to create Fiori application, all we have to do is call the palette, command palette, and say open application generator. This will launch the application generator for Fiori elements. We will pick the list report page. That's what we are planning to create an application for. Now in data source, here we have an option to connect to a system, connect to OData service, business accelerator hub, CAP project, and you could also upload a metadata document. In our case, this is not a conventional OData service. And I'm saying it's not conventional is because if you select system and if you go select OData service, that OData service has to be in the discovery service. And it will be in discovery service only if you register it on OData gateway, and our service is not registered. So we cannot use the connect to system. However, we can use connect to OData service. Now this does not really goes through the same channel, doesn't really check for the discovery service. It says you provide the OData service URL and system is fine to use that. So let's type that ABAP on cloud, and then 5000 by custom app. Now, since we are saying, well, this is my custom service, even though it's in SAP landscape, but we said, well, it's a OData service and it could be any service. And then system queries it and it sees if there is a like authentication status back, then it prompts for the username and a password. Now this is the same username and a password which I used it for SAP system. Okay. Once you enter, you can click on this to log in. So now this service has to have a metadata. The service metadata is invalid. So let's see why it's invalid, because we did not enter the table. And then again, we will put password and say validate. Now you can see there is no error. That means this wizard basically checks for the metadata, and it is in compliance with how it expects, and that's why there is no error. So we are good to use that metadata to generate an application. Here we passed S-Flight. So intention is to create a list report application for S-Flight. Now next. And from here, it's a standard. So this is the main entity set. If you haven't noticed, here when we generated OData, it returns as an entity set name as S-Flight set. And that's what the application generator sees. Set. Table type, you can pick whatever you want. Let's leave it responsive. Next. Now, flight booking. Application title, flight data. Description, a flight booking model, and then we have to specify which path you want to store this in. So projects, and I will say S flight. I think it generates folder automatically. I just have to give a base path, and then system creates its own folder. The version doesn't really matter. Deployment, we are not planning to deploy, so I will leave that no. FLP configuration, I will say yes, because if we want to test application, we need FLP configuration. So let's say yes, then it will ask for the FLP configuration. So we'll say the semantic object is as flight, action is display, and title is again flight data model, and then finish. So here you can see system is, well, under my picture, system is generating all the dependencies required for that application using Node.js. It's a local install, so it's going to create a local project in VS Code. Once it creates this project, it will add to my workspace, and from there we can preview this application. So let's give a minute. And even though I showed you just the metadata part of the service of the OData, the framework which I prototyped does give the data portion also. So our application is ready. And this is a standard application. If you have been developing, or if you have been creating your Fury applications for long, you probably are you're familiar with this screen. So what here it says, what this application is basically a structure of a Fury element. We don't need this. Let's close that. Let's close that. Now, before I test this application, I need to do one thing. By default, OData, by default, if we create an application using Fury elements and OData, it uses a batch call. Batching is basically collect all the calls and then send as one request. So you receive, the response in one set. In short, that's how it works. But the framework at this point is not capable of supporting batch operations. So instead, batch operations, we can tell system to make individual calls. So how do we do that? We go to manifest.json, go to your data model here, data source main service. Underneath settings, we'll say use batch, and we'll set it false. So doing this, system will not use batch calls, but it will use general get and post calls. Get, post, create, whatever calls, but it's not going to batch it together. Once we have this, then do we need anything else? These are fairly standard generated. So let's give a try. So to run a Fury application, or to test Fury application in VS Code, you can run just say npm start. Oh, we are in a project directory, so we have to change to, or you can, where is it? Hold on, there is an option to here, open in integrated terminal. If you do that, the path will change to your project directory, or you could cd into the project directory and then run npm start. Now this should open our application in the browser. So there we have, and we should see a pop-up for sign in because this is protected service. Okay, so far everything works fine. We can see our application is here. We did not do any metadata configuration. We don't have any default column list, so that's why we don't see anything here. But if I go to my column configuration and if I say, well, add all the columns, okay. So we have these columns. By the way, these columns are generated from that metadata service which I showed you earlier. That is how the application is built automatically. Now, if I send this request, we get the data. So this service basically not only supplies metadata, but it also supplies data. And I don't have to create OData behind the scene. We can see here, we have all the fields and the data from the backend. This is just one example. You might be thinking like, oh, it could be possible, I might have configured that, this specific S-Flight OData service, and I'm just using that, but we can create another one. I can pick any service here. Let's go. Something, I don't know, in flight, let me go to the package. This data model has a lot of tables. In flight, booking, carrier, and so on. Let's see if we can find something else. Database tables. So we just created a service for S-Flight. There is a S-Meal, there are meal, in-flight meals, there's an invoice, flight schedule, that's the common one. Let's say plane. And we'll see if there is a data for this one. Okay, not allowed, that's fine. Or this one has FLTP. I haven't tried with FLTP, but let's see. So it gives the plane type and then the seat capacities and so on. So let's try with this one. It's called SAP plane. No, SA plane. So let's create another application. This I will stop. Again, view, command palette, open application generator, list report. Next, data source. We know OData source here. Did I close that? No, it's here. So what I will do is instead typing the whole path, I will go here, copy that, and instead of slide SA plane. Is that what we have here? SAPLANE. So SAPLANE. Okay, and then again, user ID, password for this system. And check. We are good. Next. So now the entity set changed to the table name set. And this is how the prototype framework works. Takes the table, adds this set, and then it makes the set, entity set. Flight model. I don't remember what I put before, but should be fine. Application title, planes. Say planes. Again, doesn't really matter what we put here. Projects, let's see, E, and then We don't want flight booking, so we'll leave it project as a base directory, root directory, and system will create another. We need FLP configuration to test. Next, semantic object, flight model, action display, title, just leave it the same. And that's it. So we are creating now the second project. Once this project is ready, we should see a prompt to add this to the to my main workspace, and then we should see two projects here instead of one. Collapse. So we have this one. We should have another project there. It is behind me here. Some there. Here you can see. Here. So whenever we create project, the Node.js installs all the dependencies and required components. So do you trust the author of? Yes. So like I said, now we have flight model. We had flight bookings, we have flight model. And the same way what we did in earlier example, we have to go to, let me close that. We go to flight model, web, and manifest JSON or JSON, whatever way it is pronounced. We go under our data source, and here we say use batch false. So the Fury elements, they don't use the batch call, or the Fury framework doesn't use the batch, but it uses the individual call. So it's going to make an individual call for individual request. So we say use batch, and pretty much that's all we need. We'll change to this path here down, flight model, then npm start. And now we should see the planes model. So let's go select columns, and as you can see, we already have metadata. Okay, and go. We have data now. So we have this fuel type, length, the average consumption, and so on. So whatever we see in that table, this table, we have it in our Fury Elements application. So this is, I mean, it is so simple now. If you want to create a single page application, you don't have to create your OData service. You don't have to generate all those artifacts. If intention is to just use a single page with just one table, it's fairly simple. Now, I will show you behind the scene the code, how it works, how it generates metadata, how it generates the data, and how it is dynamic. Because if you notice, the whole thing is so dynamic, all it cares is about one table name. Once we have a table name, system generates metadata, generates data, it extracts, and by the way, it goes beyond that. And why I'm saying beyond that is because I did not implement that feature yet, but I will be doing that. Like in OData, when we make a call to backend, you have option to pass select columns. We could use those selects, so we can also use here. We can also have queries like a top, we can have count, all those kind of things, because those are passed as part of a URL parameter. We can take them and we can implement that feature. Now, what I'm planning to do is, first of all, there will be a base framework, which is good enough on its own. Without any developer additions, without any customizations or extensions, system should be capable of supplying metadata and data for a given table. But beyond that, let's say if you want to enhance even further, as an example, you want to change part of a data, or you want to add some metadata information which is not in the table. So we will give a sort of extensibility option for developers. So developers can get a point somewhere in the execution stack. They can add their code, and that code will reflect in the application. So application is going to execute their code, take the results, include it in the final the result set when it returns back, and then pass that to SAP Fury or Fury application. So that way developers also gets a control. They will have a lot more flexibility, and then the base framework works out of the box. You don't really, if you don't want extensions, you just use the base framework and pretty much you are good to go. You don't have to spend time on creating services. Now, this is not like conventional a way of creating applications. uh, if you are if you want some application quick, which is like use and throw kind of applications, you could use something like this. But if you have a complex application, way too many associations, a lot of like dependencies and stuff, then you should again go back and create your wrap application using standard framework, or use a CGW, or use CDS based OData service. It's up to you. I just wanted to show you the basic, like how it works, what I did, and how we could bring it to the next level. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.